Hey guys, what is up? This is Matt, today it's me, and once again, welcome back to another video game review. This time it is going to be on Dead Space, the new 2023 remake. Now, of course, with this being a remake, it is of course a remake to, obviously, the 2008 game of the same name, which I did review on my channel a few years ago. It was such a great game that I wanted to play the other games. I do have the whole trilogy for Xbox 360. I never actually beat Dead Space 2, and I never played Dead Space 3 because I heard it wasn't as good. I mean, it's not supposed to be a bad game, just doesn't live up to the first two games. So, because of the third game, it would appear that the Dead Space series would come a bit stale. But when the announcement of a remake was coming out, it was less of a remaster and more of a revival to the entire thing. And of course, if you're unaware what Dead Space is about, it involves a man named Isaac Clarke, along with other people in space on a mission. And of course, it is swarming with these zombie-like creatures called necromorphs. And of course, you have to fight your way through them. But there's a twist to this entire thing. Instead of shooting them wherever, like in the head or in the torso or anything like that, you have to cut off their limbs, because that's pretty much their weak spot. All of them, you need to cut off their weak spots, which are their limbs pretty much. And that's what makes Dead Space very unique and very creative, is that it's not your titular shoot wherever running gun game. It's basically Resident Evil 4 meets Mass Effect a little bit. That's personally what I consider it. Now, when the original came out, it was a big deal. It changed survival horror forever, and it focused a lot on what the original Resident Evil games did. Like, of course, staying true to the horror and less of the action. And while you do shoot a lot in the game, it was a lot more than just shooting your way through enemies, because the games were tense. They were terrifying. And when it comes to the remake, it would seem like they would try their best to reinvent the formula a little bit. And some people might consider this just a remaster, when I wouldn't consider that at all. In fact, it is a new game, and it's one that stays true to its source material in almost every single way. This is what Dead Space needed. It needed a new start, a new, fresh recreation, because we haven't heard from Dead Space in years. I feel like this is a great new start for the franchise if they do decide to make more games like this. Dead Space Remake is incredible, and it does almost everything better than the original game. Now, I feel like the original game has aged very well, and while the graphics aren't anything to write home about, at least nowadays, but they looked impressive for their time, and with the amped up version, it just looks absolutely outstanding. Like, they improved on the graphics in every single way, as well as the blood and the gore, and I'm not going to show any of that here because, of course, the new YouTube policy thing, and I don't want to have to deal with that. But I will show images of the game that aren't as grotesque. But this is a very brutal game, and there's a lot that this game goes for, not just for the gore, but in terms of its horror too. The horror is back, and the game is dark, the way the atmosphere is, the way the game looks, and the way you go to certain areas, and there's so much darkness, and when you shoot at enemies, you have a light, and that gives the game more atmosphere. And the fact that this game is running at 60 FPS makes it even more tense. I feel like when a game runs at 60 FPS in terms of horror, I feel like it's more terrifying than 30 FPS in my opinion. It honestly makes it feel more realistic. Another big change that this game has going for it is its characters. They're well more fleshed out, especially Isaac Clarke, who you play as throughout the game. Unlike the first game, where he doesn't speak at all, but is able to speak in the sequels, he actually speaks throughout the entire game. And he's played again by the same voice actor as in the last two games, so I feel like his performance was very strong, and I really am happy that he actually manages to speak in this. Because in the original game, he's just told what to do and doesn't question why he has to do certain stuff. In here, he's very responsive to other characters, so that makes his character more well-developed. And I thought Isaac Clarke was a great character in the games, but he's way better here. And they did a great job with the writing and the dialogue, though the game does go into the same story route as the original game. There is some changes that actually do separate apart. Like, you get side missions while there aren't that many side missions. It's basically one whole mission, but you have to do them by pieces. And you do get a trophy if you do get all of them, and that's exactly what I did. If you want a much more longer and more diverse experience. So the game took me roughly around like 10 hours to beat. I feel like the game has so much replay value. Like, you don't complete everything on your first playthrough. Like, you need to play it multiple times if you want to get like the platinum trophy, and that includes playing on the hardest difficulty, which is something I'm probably never going to do. But once I did beat the game, I got like more than half the trophy, so I was satisfied. But I do want to replay the game again, just so I can beat the game with multiple, just one specific weapon, or playing it on a slightly higher difficulty. I also don't recommend playing story mode because it does make the game too easy, because every time you get hit, your health regenerates. So there's really no point in getting the health items. But you should still get them in case you want to do New Game Plus. With all the amount of collectibles that there is, it's hard to not want to replay it. So the game is definitely worth it for replay value, but at $70, it still might be a little too pricey. I feel like if it was just regular full price, that would be entirely worth it, just in case you guys aren't fully sure. Or you can always rent the game. As for me, I feel like this is a remake that really, I'm happy that it exists, because it just adds so much, and improvements too. Like, remember in the original Dead Space where there's that one mission where you have to defend the ship from, meteors and asteroids? Yeah, that's been cut out and replaced with a more fun level where you defend asteroids in space while shooting them with cannons and stuff, and it doesn't feel tedious, and I never felt like I was sweating because I was about to lose the level. It was actually very satisfying. And it goes to show that they are trying their best to separate this apart from the original game, and they do. While there are definitely some parts that definitely do feel the same, like the final boss is the same, which I do feel like is a little disappointing, but there is an alternate ending you can get. And I haven't gotten that ending, but I feel like with multiple replay value that this game has, it definitely feels like worth it to try to get that one ending. And the upgrade system, too, is fantastic. You can upgrade your gear, including your weapons. Throughout the main storyline on your first playthrough, you're going to have like 7 weapons total, but there were some really creative ones and some fresh new ideas that they've had for some of these weapons. Like, my favorite one probably has to be like the buzzsaw one, where you have like a buzzsaw blade. It's like a gravity gun mixed with a saw blade, and you just use it and just point at enemies. It was really cool to have. Like, there were just so many unique things that this game had going for it that really doesn't make it feel like it's just a remastered port. This isn't something like the Uncharted Nathan Drake collection, or the Last of Us remake, or Part 1 remake for PS5, or Demon's Souls. No, this is actually a game that separates it apart from the original. It's not just a port. It's not a port at all, in my opinion. It's definitely more of a recreation and a new fresh start for this series. And also, there also aren't that many loading screens. I mean, there are when you die, and you are going to die a lot, and the deaths are very disturbing, just like they were in the original. And there are times where I died and I didn't even know how I died, and it definitely affected me. And there were some times where I was like flying through gravity or anti-gravity areas and have to go through fans, and I get really nervous. But of course, you do get the same abilities that you had in the original. Like, of course, you can slow down time. You can grab things with your gravity hand or whatever, and you can shoot them back at enemies. So there are still the unique puzzles that the game has. There aren't that many of them, but that's okay, because the game never felt confusing or frustrating, because there's always that line that you can put down so you can go to the area that you need to go. The game just had so much going for it, and it made me so happy that they actually did put a lot of care, and EA was still a part of this one. So yeah, EA, I mean, it's EA. They're not really having the best reputation, but this is definitely one of their better games in quite a while. Of course, there's also new objectives that you do, and I can just go on all day of what this game separates it apart from the original. I mean, the original was already a damn good game, but wow. They put so much love in here that they show that they want this franchise to come back, and I hope it fully does. Maybe with a new game, maybe with a Dead Space 2 remake, or even a Dead Space 3 remake, where they just completely remove the action from the third game and just focus on what made Dead Space great in the first place. I was just having myself a blast throughout, and in the end, guys, Dead Space is what a remake really needs to do more often. It's a remake that shies away from the original with the stuff that wasn't so good in that game. While that game was already amazing, there definitely were some things that they could have improved upon, and I feel like the improvements are in this remake. The horror, the action, it is all there, and it understands what made Dead Space so good to begin with. And all that is here with new, updated stuff to really separate apart from the original. It's the type of remake that we need more often, and I hope Resident Evil 4 Remake and Silent Hill 2 Remake are as good as this, because this was a great new fresh start for the series, and I really hope this is a revival for the franchise, because I really want to see more after this. And if you're curious about the other games, I recommend just starting off with this one, because this is a great new start for the series. So all I can say is that Dead Space is truly, I wouldn't necessarily say, I was going to say something like a space trip I would definitely take, but of course I would have to deal with necromorphs. All I can say is that it's highly worth playing. If you're a fan of the original, you might like this remake even more. Just, you might want to wait for a price drop if you still think $70 is too much. I, for one, am happy with the money I spent on this one. It was more than worth my time. It's one of the first must-owns of the year, and I couldn't recommend it enough. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Word out.